I'm Margot True. I'm the food editor at Sunset Magazine, and we're here at the Sunset Outdoor Kitchen at the Cornerstone Gardens in Sonoma. And with me is Jamie Purviance, who is the master griller for Weber, and this is his newest book, 125 recipes. It's Weber's greatest hits. Now, Jamie has created something like 2,500 recipes for Weber, and to choose just 125 must have been a huge challenge. How did you do that?
Well, I actually didn't do it. What we did is we decided to ask the Weber fans. So folks who have registered at Weber.com, we know who owns the cookbooks, and we asked them, okay, of these 2,500 some, what are your favorites? What are the ones you go back to time and time again? And so that's how the book got created. Wow.
Well, and that's pretty fantastic that you could even drill it down, that they could distill it to this number. Did you have to go in and then make the final decisions, or?
There were a couple that were on the edge. You know, there were some that all had the same number of votes, and so I had to pick one from that group. So I got some of my personal favorites in there.
Oh, good.
But what's cool about it is, using the book, you know that other people have tried these and liked them well enough to vote for them. So they're vetted, right? They're solid recipes, and you know that you're going to start out with something great, as opposed to who knows. So some cookbooks, you know, who knows? You try it and
complete unknown. We've
you
all
wish for the
been there.
best, and it doesn't always happen. But these are solid, really solid, great recipes.
Yeah, and a lot of them were tested to begin with in the original books.
Oh yes,
so.
Yeah. We have a triple testing system. I know at Sunset you guys do extensive testing as well.
We do.
Yeah, so we have a minimum of 3 separate independent tests, and that usually refines it pretty well. And sometimes after 3 tests, it's just not wowing us. You know, it's a little underwhelming, so it goes out. Not a contender anymore.
Rigorous.
Yes.
Okay, well, what are you going to make today?
Well, I thought I would do a couple of appetizers because I think a lot of people have their favorite main dishes, you know, for Father's Day or any other holiday. They love their barbecue chicken or their pulled pork. But sometimes people are looking, what am I going to do as a first course, maybe an appetizer? And the other one is, of course, desserts as well. People are wondering what. I hope they're wondering, because that's some people think, well, I'm going to buy a cake or, you know, make a pie in the oven, but there are actually quite a few recipes in Weber's Greatest Hits for desserts, so maybe we can get to that in another video. But today it's a couple of appetizers. So we're doing a Filet Mignon Crostini with a balsamic onion jam. You can see we've already sort of started here. We've got the beautiful fillets, and we've made that onion jam with balsamic vinegar and brown sugar. It's a nice kind of sweet and sour mixture. And we're going to serve it with a little crema with some horseradish on top. It's just an easy but really delicious first course, I think.
Yeah, it smells good already.
Good. And then we're going to go with a vegetarian bruschetta. You have to say chetta, right? Or otherwise the Italians might get mad at me. Bruschetta. With a caponata topping. So it's you know, typically that's an eggplant and tomato and olive and caper thing, and we're going to grill the vegetables instead of just saute them as typically is done. So it gives it that extra layer of flavor, that little bit of smokiness, and we got the bruschetta taking on some of the smoke too. I think bruschetta actually means roasted over the coals, so it's supposed to have that flavor of the fire.
Ah, nice. So you're going back to the original.
Right.
Perhaps.
Very authentic. So, shall we begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the thing that'll take the longest are the steaks. So I've got here these beautiful filet mignon from the beef tenderloin. And you can see they're already oiled and seasoned, and I typically do that about 20 or 30 minutes before they go on the grill. You don't have to do it, but I think it helps a little bit with the penetration of the flavor. I also like to leave the steaks out of the refrigerator because it obviously takes the chill off of them, and that way they cook a little bit more evenly.
Okay.
Right? So I put a little bit of oil on both sides, and salt and pepper. I've just used, you know, kosher salt.
And what kind of oil do you like to use for this?
I use an olive oil. I think it works really well. Not necessarily the fanciest, most expensive olive oil that you'd put on a salad, but Today, actually, it's a pretty good California olive oil that I'm drizzling on these steaks.
Now we like that olive oil too.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So some people wonder, well, should I oil the food itself or should I oil the grates? And I just want to say that obviously I'm a fan of oiling the food. I think when you oil the grates to prevent sticking, obviously is a reason. It does prevent sticking, but it causes a couple of side effects. One of them is that, well, you use a lot more oil, and a lot of it just pours right through the grate. The oil, of course, hits that hot steel and kind of burns. It reaches its smoking point really quickly. And if it's a really nice olive oil, you sort of lose all the nuance of it, right?
Just immediately.
Gone,
right?
gone. You might as well be using just plain old vegetable oil,
right?
When you put it on the steak or the chicken breast or the fish or whatever, the meat, the protein kind of insulates it so it doesn't reach that smoking point.
And if you've ever used a wadded up bunch of paper towels that are oiled and tried to oil your grate that way, the paper towels start to smoke and burn.
Yeah, it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
It really can. So these are going down over direct heat. It's always important to mention for people who are new to it that there's two basic kinds of heat. Direct is when the coals are right under the food, and indirect is when the food is off to the side. So if I had the steaks over here, now there are no burning coals underneath it. That would be indirect. And sometimes you use a combination of direct and indirect. We may do that with these. If they start to get a little bit too dark on direct, then you slide them over to indirect. And now with the lid closed, they're basically roasting more slowly, and they're not overcooking or burning on the outside. Really important to get the lid closed at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people forget about the lid, don't they?
Right. They forget, or they just want to be looking all the time. They want, maybe they're a little nervous about how things are going, or they're sort of fidgety. I know a lot of guys that just feel like, I'm not really grilling unless I'm interacting somehow with the food and the fire.
Right.
But that does cause some problems. If you're fiddling too much, like if I tried to turn this now, what would happen is it would probably want to stick, and I might tear the flesh.
Right.
The other thing is that I've only developed a little bit of the potential flavor. I mean, it'll be sort of a beige color underneath there. It doesn't taste particularly good. You want that dark brown, char. So I've got to leave it alone long enough to let that develop. Coincidentally, that char happens when the steak is ready to release. So you'll notice it'll just turn over very, very easily. Other good reasons for having the lid closed are it keeps the grate hotter, so you get a better sear and less sticking. Also, it's trapping the smoke that's generated in there, right? Otherwise, that smoke is just drifting off into your neighbor's backyard, not doing your food much good at all.
And tantalizing them.
Right, which is sort of fun in its own way. But in terms of making the food taste better, you keep the lid closed. Also, now you're getting some heat reflecting off the top of the lid here, so that's going to cook things a little bit faster, which is often a good thing, particularly with a steak, which dries out over time, right? So it's sort of the sooner you can get it on and off, the juicier it's going to be. So a lot of good reasons to keep the lid closed. The vent's got to be open up here. That's important. You don't want to close that. Otherwise, you'd probably put out the fire.
Right, because fire needs oxygen too.
It needs oxygen. You've got air coming in from below and going out the top. Both have to be open. If sometimes you notice that you're losing heat, but you have plenty of coals in there, could be that you've got ashes blocking the vent down here. So periodically you want to just sweep those ashes so that there's, a clear path for the air to travel. Don't shake it too hard, because then you'll kick up some ash and that'll get on your food.
Yes, I have done that.
It's better to do that before you put the food on, actually. Then you can go at it.
Yeah. Make the cloud. I have a question about steaks. Say you're grilling a whole bunch. Like right now we're going to serve 20 people for dinner. You have a big dinner party. So you've got all of these steaks on the grill, but they can't all be cooking at once or searing at once. Do you cook them all in batches and set them aside, or do you cook all of them part way and set them aside and then return them for a big finish? And by the way, I wanted to ask you guys, you should ask questions if you have them of Jamie, and he'll answer. So if you have any questions, please ask, and Kendra, off camera, will put them to Jamie. And
Correct.
by the way, we also have to take a commercial break, so hold on, we'll be right back. Hello, we're back with In the Kitchen With, and today it's Jamie Purviance, the master griller from Weber, for Weber, and I'm Margot True. I'm the food editor for Sunset Magazine. We're here in our outdoor kitchen at Cornerstone Gardens in Sonoma, and Jamie is right in the middle of telling us why or how you can grill a lot of steaks at once for a dinner party and what the technique would be for finishing them, cooking them, and finishing them.
Yeah, so this is sort of like the risotto trick that restaurant chefs use, where they'll partially cook it before service, and then as they get an order, they heat it through, and it's good to go. So with steaks, there's this new trick. It's one of the things I mentioned in Weber's Greatest Hits, actually. There's some trips and techniques for the expert. And there's something called the reverse sear, which would be really good in this situation.
Okay.
So normally you sear steaks at the beginning, as I'm doing right here.
Right.
And that works great if you've only got 3 or 4 steaks. But if you've got a big group, or if you really want to sort of control and slow down the whole process, what you do is you start the steaks over indirect heat. So I was showing you earlier that right now these steaks are cooking over direct heat. Wonderful. And then we have an indirect area over here. If I started them on this side and then closed the lid and let them roast slowly until they came up to below rare, I mean, we want to be at about 110 degrees if you have an instant read thermometer, then you can pull them off of the grill. They don't look very good at that point. They're sort of just gray and they've just been kind of baking in there. They've developed some smokiness. You can taste it later. But that way they're basically done. And all you need to do is grill them for maybe a minute or 2 on each side over high heat and serve them. So that would be a great way to get them out quickly at the last minute.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
I may need this. Oh, and you also said something very interesting. The book is full of tips and techniques. And those of you who are just tuning in, let me show you the book. It's called Weber's Greatest Hits. It's 125, well, really, the best recipes from over 2,500 recipes that Jamie has developed in the past 2 decades.
I just want everyone to see the color of this steak. I mean, this is not the beige. This is the crust that you really want. That's flavor. You develop entirely new flavors when you brown the meat that way. And if you can manage to have that and then still this juicy meat inside, you're a winner, right? You're eating well. So we're going to let those go on the other side. And then why don't we turn our attention to the Caponata. Okay. So this is made with grilled eggplant. I just wanted to share one tip about eggplant. I'm sure you know this, Margot, but it's great for people who are a little bit on the fence about eggplant because sometimes it's a bit bitter.
True.
What you can do is generously season the eggplant slices, particularly the ones that have a lot of seeds like this one. That's actually where most of the bitterness is. If you season these with kosher salt and let them sit in a colander like this, you can see that you've drawn out some moisture there. And that's the bitterness, actually, or at least most of it. And at that point, you rinse them of that excess salt, and then you go ahead and oil them and grill them.
Right.
You don't always... Sorry, go ahead.
Is there any way to choose a less bitter eggplant that has fewer seeds? Or
I have found that the narrower ones tend to have fewer seeds.
Okay.
So there's a male and a female, and I think the females actually have the bigger... the bigger bottoms.
More curvaceous.
Right, they're more curvaceous, and I find that the narrower ones aren't quite as bitter. So there you go. I personally don't mind it. I kind of like that little bit of edginess, little bit of,
Yeah.
So I'm going to oil these and get them on the grill. I tend to use these pans. I think they're really helpful for I just kind of put some oil down on the bottom of the pan and then sort of dredge things through it.
Oh, that makes it much easier.
And it just works. You need a fair amount of oil with eggplant. It's like a sponge.
True.
And when it's on the grill for a little bit, it tends to get a little bit dry. So you may actually want to go back and baste a bit. So I've also got some onions that I'm going to put on there to make this beautiful caponata. And these I'm going to do at a slightly lower temperature than the steak. But the steak is not at a raging high temperature. I think a lot of people think you always have to blast the steak. with super high, you know, like 600, 700 degrees. For some steaks that works really well. I would do maybe ribeye steaks that way. For these tenderloin, they're a little bit leaner, and so they might dry out over that high temperature. So I go at about a medium high. And I got to follow my own rule and close the lid here.
You know, Jamie, something else interesting, well, you say many interesting things in the book, but pertaining to steaks in particular, you say something about making sure to sear them on all sides, which is something people tend to forget.
Yes, steaks and other meats. I'm thinking of pork tenderloin, which doesn't really have two sides the way steaks do. People tend to grill them as if they had two sides. They turn them just once, but you know, there's some area there that's not developing as much flavor as it could. So sometimes you actually have to get in there. If I did it with these steaks, instead of put them on their side, you know, stand them up like this, and that way you get some browning, particularly if there's some fat there that you want to render.
Oh yeah.
You know, on a pork chop or something, or a steak. This is a really good way to do it, because golden brown usually means delicious in food, right?
So
you know?
true. So true. Excellent. Well, I just wanted to remind you all, viewers, that you can actually write in the comments section, ask Jamie any questions, and he'll answer you live. Jamie is the master griller for Weber, so don't miss this chance. And I'm Margot True. I'm the food editor at Sunset Magazine, and we're making some delicious appetizers for, actually, this would be great to do for Father's Day. Those of you who are a little like not sure what to do for your dad, make one of these from Jamie's new book, which is Weber's Greatest Hits. I'll show it to you again. This lovely book. And the whole thing would make a great gift, really, if your dad's a big griller. Just get this and you get the best of Weber in one book.
Yeah, people have asked me for years, because I've done a lot of books, as you say, 15, I think actually 16 now. 16? 16 books, and they say, well, which one should I get? And I hem and haw, and I sort of find out what kind of griller, or maybe they're a barbecue person. And this book is great because now I can just say, you know what, just get Weber's Greatest Hits, because it has a little bit of everything. It has barbecue recipes, smoking recipes, you know. Obviously, you know, I've done a book just on burgers. This has the best burgers. I've done a book on steaks. This has the best steaks. I have the, you know, one on seafood, et cetera, et cetera.
It's like the cream of Weber. That's excellent. And you know what's interesting to me, having read a lot of your books, is that you always give the same basic instruction, because there's always somebody who needs the basics. But in this one, it's really, you can tell you've done it a lot, because it's really pared down. It's like, after all of these years, this really is what you need to know, you know, the 10 top things people do wrong when they're grilling, the 5 meats that have proven to be the favorite meats for people grilling all over the world, or all over America anyway. So what are some of the things that people tend to do wrong, beginners? Like, you know, you mentioned, sure, you mentioned, you know, having meat, that you need an indirect heat area. What about?
I think not understanding when to use direct versus indirect. That's key. Grilling with the lid open too much, fiddling with the food too much is very typical. I think just generally crowding the grill too much. They pack it, right? And they try to do 4 or 5 things at once: sausages and corn on the cob and steaks and hot dogs, and the problem with that is that it gives you very little flexibility. Because what if something's cooking a little bit too fast? It's burning, perhaps. You're getting flare-ups. You're sort of in a straitjacket. There's nowhere to go with the food. So it's better to just take 1 or 2 things at a time and grill those just right. Give yourself some room to move on the grill. I say at least, you know, a third of the grill should be open for that sort of flexibility.
A third?
Yeah, a third.
A third for emergencies.
Yeah. That way you can get in underneath things easily. And more importantly, you can move things off to the side. Always having an area of indirect heat is really important. Even if the recipe says you're going to be grilling this over direct heat, I have kind of that indirect zone. I call it the safety zone. Right? That's something, if things are going a little bit the wrong way, you've always got a place to move it. Then you can kind of collect yourself and decide what you're going to do from there.
Well, what if could a sheet pan off to the side work as a safety zone, or is that
It could,
too
it could,
cold?
but there's a point of pride here. You know, you've got to. I think if you're taking it off the grill, you're sort of throwing up the flag. You know, you're saying, "I quit. I'm out of. I'm losing. Somebody help." So I think it's a little better to keep it on the grill. It's over indirect. There's really not a whole lot that can go wrong there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
Sheet pan if you need.
Okay.
So let me make you a little bit of this. This is the crostini. So this is just onions that I've cooked in a skillet, but I did it on the grill. You can do that, you know. You can use the heat of, and then a little bit of the filet mignon.
Oh, I like that twist.
A little twist for
Interest.
my daughter Julie actually told me I had to up the plating game a little bit. Dad, you can't just, you know, I just want to put it down there and dig in, but no, you got to have it make it look good. So, and then there's a little bit of it, just a sour cream and horseradish kind of mixture, and you add as much as you like, of course. It's kind of a play on the holiday feast, you know, the big beef roast with the horseradish sauce. And we just put a little dollop of that on there. And would you do me a favor and just garnish it with some chives? That would be lovely. And it's a nice, flavorful start, you know. And I think an appetizer, particularly a 1 or 2 biter like this, it has to pack a bit of a punch. You don't want something wimpy. You want to make an impact right off the bat. So now you got the smokiness of the meat, you got the sweet and sour of the onions, a little bit of heat from the horseradish. It's a nice way to begin.
Delicious. And
Yeah.
I'm going to prepare a beverage while you're,
Okay, great.
because we must have something to drink with us.
Sounds good. So I want to just give people another tip about how often to fiddle. You'll see I tend to turn things once or twice, and that's about it in an ideal world. Because again, I think the reason we like grilled food, certainly I do, is it has that sort of charred, caramelized quality about it. And if you're constantly turning it, you're getting these kind of half grilled, half charred, or even worse flavors. You know, they're sort of meek.
Yeah.
And I like bold flavors.
I'm with you there.
So while you're doing that, I'm just going to explain the rest of this caponata mixture. So these are fresh tomatoes, and there are some Kalamata olives. These are the grilled onions. There's some garlic down in there. We've got some fresh basil, and I'm going to add just a touch of olive oil to that. Still have the eggplant to come. A touch of balsamic vinegar. It's kind of like a salad dressing for these ingredients. And some salt and pepper.
For this preparation, do you need the really super expensive stuff, or what would you recommend in terms of the balsamic vinegar?
Oh, it would be better with the really expensive stuff, but I don't think it's required. I do this with kind of a supermarket vinegar, and
it still turns out.
It's wonderful, yeah. What really matters here is the quality of the bread. Got some beautiful Sonoma County bread here today. The way that it's charred. A good goat cheese. Again, I've got a Sonoma Valley goat cheese. This is the Laura Chanel. And
nice.
Another thing that you can do once you've grilled the bread, if you want to up the flavor, you know this, you just brush it with a little bit of garlic.
It just melts into the nooks
It does.
and crannies.
It kind of glistens there, and you can really taste it in the finished product. So that's nice.
That's what the Spanish do for pan amb tomate. I can never say it right.
I know what you mean, right.
The tomato bread with garlic.
Right. Super simple, but just so good if you've got good tomatoes and nice garlic. So it's just a little smear of the goat cheese, and then we'll spoon that caponata on top of it. And this is actually a nice one for entertaining because it's a lot of do-ahead. In fact, this mixture gets better if you let it sit for hours even.
Okay.
So
chilled.
Well, it depends. If I did the day before, I'd probably chill it. But if it was the morning, I would just let it sit on the counter.
Okay.
I mean, it's just vegetables. Nothing's going to go bad.
And they all just mingle.
They all just mingle. All the juices start to flow together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's looking nice.
Yeah, we're starting to get some good color on here. You know, some of them are ready earlier than others. That's part of live fire cooking. You know, if you put down a few slices of eggplant or a few pieces of steak, they're not all necessarily going to cook in exactly the same time. So you have to use your instincts that you've hopefully developed over time for what you're looking for. To me, that's part of the thrill of outdoor cooking, is it is so interactive and variable. You know, the idea that we're cooking over coals that get very hot and then lose their heat over time, and then you have to feed the fire, and then you have to judge when to put the food on. It's very different than kind of kitchen cooking, right?
It sure is, because sometimes if it's windy, you know, that'll affect your heat too. It'll sort of dissipate it, and you know, you have to really counteract that with more coals. Try to, if you can, to shelter your flame from the wind. It makes it more exciting.
It does.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're cooking with like lump charcoal.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's, or even more so with just wood. Just logs. There you get, you know, the big flames initially, and then you have to time it just right so that the flames are low enough that you're going to cook on it without engulfing your food in flames. But lump charcoal, you get some of that too. You get a lot of high heat and the sparks, and the temperature drops quite quickly because it's just wood. And the briquettes and such have fillers in them that are meant to extend the fire. So it's easier in a sense, that you create more evenness over time. But I really like the lump or the wood logs for the drama.
Yeah, and I guess it's sort of, you know, it is kind of akin to, like, you've probably heard this analogy, but driving a stick shift versus an automatic car, you know, stick shift, you're really driving, like you are really involved with that car. And it's the same over live fire. And so there's just a lot of fun to be had. So would you recommend people start out with briquettes then, if they're not as used to charcoal grilling?
I think so.
Or live fire grilling? Yeah,
briquettes are pretty easy. And start out with something that you can cook in 20 minutes or so, which is about how long briquettes maintain a very even temperature. Then they start to lose heat.
Right.
So just do some pork chops or some burgers or something like that.
You know, one of the parts of your book that I enjoyed most was the tips that you give for cooking foods that everyone assumes are really easy, like burgers and sausage. Who doesn't know how to grill a burger or a sausage? But what you have to say, oh, that looks so good.
Looks like summer, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold my question to just admire your bruschetta.
And you could cut this in half or thirds, whatever. Or this could be like a plated first course with a fork and knife.
Be very fancy.
If you want, yeah. Go any direction.
Wow. But the things that you have to say about the foods everyone assumes they can grill because they're American. Who can't grill burgers or sausage? But see what you said in the book about the sausages. You know, you have your lovely uncooked, say, raw Italian sausage, and people tend to just, throw it on the grill over high heat?
They throw it on the grill, whatever temperature. They don't really know what temperature is. Anything will work. Sometimes it's way too high, and what happens then is that the casings quickly burst, and the fat starts to pour out of there and creates flame immediately. And suddenly you've got an inferno inside your grill, and they split open and they tear, and it's kind of a disaster.
And the children are sad.
And the sausage maker is offended, you know.
So what should you do?
Well, you should go more gently. Either a low to medium heat, or even indirect makes a lot of good sense. Just to let it sort of slow roast, and then maybe at the very end put it over direct heat just to crisp it up.
Okay.
Or you can start over direct heat just to crisp it up a little bit over a medium low heat. And then what I like to do often is then put it into one of these containers with some beer and mustard and onions and stuff, and it's like this little hot tub that the sausages can rest in, which is nice because then they stay warm that way and juicy until you're ready to serve them.
Do they lose their crisp skin at all?
They do a little bit. There's there's a bit of it still left. You can taste it. So it's a trade-off. It's convenient to do it that way. Ideally, actually, another way, I didn't mention this earlier, is you could start them in the beer on the grill.
Okay.
So to poach them in that mixture. And when they're nearly done, then you move them to direct heat and kind of crisp them up.
Okay.
That's kind of ideal if you're ready to serve right away.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, should we try?
Yes, let's try.
Okay. I've prepared 2 beverages.
Oh, great.
A lovely and sparkling water and wine, so we could see both. You know, a lovely Perrier is just great with any kind of grilled food, honestly. The
Very
scrubbing
nice.
bubbles, they're so cleansing. And then this is a Sauvignon Blanc from a new winery in Sebastopol, not very far from us here in Sonoma County, called Horse and Plow. And the lovely, lovely proprietors just gave me this bottle last night. And this Sauvignon Blanc is grown with a trimmed canopy, which means that more sun accesses the fruit and creates this powerful flavor. This tastes like mandarin oranges. It's just delicious. I would encourage you guys to seek out Horse and Plow. Really good. So
I've cut you here. Cheers. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Margot.
It's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure. And you know, while we're nibbling, oh, here's a napkin for you.
Thank you. And I cut these a little smaller so that you don't have to put a big, huge piece of bread in your mouth.
Thank you. That's very considerate. I'm curious to see how this will go with the Sauvignon Blanc.
Well, we know goat cheese. Excuse my manners.
No, your advice is good. Sauvignon Blanc and goat cheese are really a great match.
Right. It's nice, right?
It's fantastic.
And the flavor of the fire, you can really taste it in there.
You really can.
It makes a difference.
And so simple, you know? Really.
Grill some eggplant, grill some onion, mix up some other ingredients, dress it like a salad dressing, grill some bread, you're good to go.
It's a lovely pairing. Sauvignon Blanc and Caponata. Okay,
And then we have the Filet Mignon with the horseradish and the sweet and sour onions.
Excellent.
Totally different flavors.
Totally
obviously.
different. But very mutually complementary and, as you say, extremely flavorful.
Right.
Just great.
I like to hit people with a little wow right at the beginning of the meal.
Why not?
Yeah.
Gosh, Jamie, what a privilege to have you come, you know, and do this for
Oh
us.
gosh.
Here, you know,
I'm a big fan of Sunset. I've been a reader for many, many years, and to be in this environment doesn't get much better here at Cornerstone in Sonoma Valley. So thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. And you're going to be at Omnivore Books tonight in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little author talk and then sign some books.
Yeah. So if you guys want to get a signed copy of Jamie's book, which is this, in case you missed it, Weber's Greatest Hits. Out of 2,500 recipes, these are the 125 finest. And you can go get this book and hear Jamie talking. Will you be cooking tonight also?
No cooking. They don't have any cooking facilities there.
Okay.
Certainly not a grill in the middle of San Francisco.
A tiny little shop indoors with lots of flammable objects, otherwise known as books.
But this weekend I will be cooking. If any of you are going to be in Chicagoland, I'm doing a special dinner at the Weber Grill restaurant outside of Chicago. The whole menu is going to be out of Weber's Greatest Hits. So lots of grilling there.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Jamie, thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to see you.
Great to see you. Happy grilling, everybody.